Welcome back to Mountain Connections. AEW has some big news here in 2022. And just yesterday, I spoke with Tony Khan, CEO of AEW, also co-owner of the Jacksonville Jaguars, all about this big move that you want to make sure you know all about. Let's take a look.
Wednesday's #1 wrestling show is moving to TBS, AEW Dynamite. Today, I'm catching up with AEW's Tony Khan. Tony, thank you so much for being here today. How are you?
I am tremendous. How are you?
I'm excited to be meeting you and talking with you today on Park City Television. You're the CEO, GM, and head of creative of AEW. And today we're talking all things wrestling with AEW Dynamite's move to TBS. So tell me more about that and what's next in 2022 for AEW.
Well, it's huge for AEW to have our show now, Wednesday Night Dynamite, every week on TBS, and to have also Friday Night Rampage every night on TNT, every Friday night on TNT. So having, two great networks, two great shows, it's awesome. And Wednesday Night Dynamite, 2 hours of great wrestling now on TBS, which has a great tradition of pro wrestling. To bring pro wrestling back to TBS is so special for us, but also it's so great to have this Friday night late night presence we have on TNT. So it's the best of both worlds. We got the best young wrestlers, the best young audience, the youngest audience in pro wrestling. 41 million people around the world watched AEW last year. So in 2022, we want to keep building our audience and having more great matches and bringing in more great wrestlers and continuing to make this the best and most competitive roster in wrestling.
So I believe it's fair to say that this will bring these wrestlers an even larger platform and more exposure.
Absolutely.
Tell me more about this diverse roster of wrestlers that you'll be highlighting in 2022.
Well, we've got tonight the TBS Championship. Of course, we'll crown the first ever TBS champion on the first Dynamite on TBS. So we've got Jade Cargill, the Rookie of the Year in pro wrestling, taking on Ruby Soho. Of course, have the most exciting young world champion in wrestling, Hangman Page, taking on arguably the greatest in-ring pro wrestler of all time, Bryan Danielson. And that will be a great match. It's a rematch of a 60-minute draw they had recently, but there's not going to be any dispute to how this one goes because we've got judges at ringside to score the fight. And the World Tag Team Championships on the line, the Lucha Brothers defending against Jungle Boy and Luchasaurus. There's so much great stuff happening around AEW right now. It's a great time to be a fan of pro wrestling, especially if you check out AEW Wednesdays on TBS and Fridays on TNT. Every week, you're guaranteed great matches.
And Tony, you're involved in so many different sports, different aspects of sporting events. One such as you are the co-owner of the Jacksonville Jaguars. Tell me what got you into AEW and what got you interested in this.
Well, I founded AEW because I'm a huge pro wrestling fan, and I saw that in the space, pro wrestling fans were ready to see wrestling come back. People wanted wrestling on TNT and TBS again. They've had a great history of wrestling, and there were so many great wrestlers around the world that were free agents. So I signed up a crop of wrestlers, some top stars who'd been competing in Japan, but they were Americans and Canadians wrestling in Japan, and also brought in from the beginning Chris Jericho, who's one of the biggest names, the best announcing team with Jim Ross, Tony Schiavone, and Excalibur, all great announcers. Jim Ross and Tony Schiavone, the legendary voices of pro wrestling. And then now, after we started up and had so much success, we've built up and have so many of the biggest names in pro wrestling, names like Sting and Bryan Danielson, CM Punk, Mark Henry, Ruby Soho, and Thunder Rosa signed as free agents this year. So we have the best action in the ring, and I think we have the best interviews, promos, announcing, and most importantly, the best fans every week.
It seems to be growing exponentially in fans. More and more people are getting aware, exposed to AEW, and really loving it.
Absolutely. We have, great success in terms of building an audience. We have great live audiences since we went back on the road for touring. And I think delivering on our promises, we promised great wrestling matches and getting to see stuff that the fans will enjoy every week. And there's a lot of wrestling fans around the world. So a lot of them had been in hibernation, and we brought them back into the habit of watching wrestling every Wednesday on TBS now and every Friday on TNT.
And what is it about AEW? There's so many aspects that people love, but if you could point to one thing that fans just really enjoy and it keeps bringing them back over and over again, what would it be?
I think it's the wrestling. People love the matches, the setup of an exciting match, an exciting story. We have that. And thanks to the great fans that are so loyal to us, because we have great audiences every week, I'm able to put together cards, put matches on the card, and find opportunities to really bring them great matches, great wrestlers wrestling great wrestlers every single week. So I think that's probably the number one thing the fans count on AEW for on Wednesdays and Fridays.
Well, AEW Dynamite premieres Wednesday, January 5th at 8 p.m. Eastern Time on TBS. Thank you so much, Tony Khan, for joining us today. It's been an absolute pleasure speaking with you and looking forward to watching even more AEW on TBS. So thanks for being here.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.